Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now to the Nigerian opera singer, Joseph Oparamanuike, who really is a most magnificent performer. If you haven't seen him live, I promise you it's really something to behold. He's been making waves around the world as arguably this country's best tenor. A few years ago, as a student of opera at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, which is the world leading music academy in Glasgow, ranked as number 3 in the world for performing arts, he was quite simply fantastic, and it was obvious even then that Joseph was going to go very, very far indeed. Today, he mixes his African musical background with the vocal styles of symphony, concerto, opera, cantata, and mass that characterize the medieval, Baroque, Renaissance, and Romantic eras in Europe, the sort of music that you hear in the great halls in London, Vienna, Rome, Paris, and New York, and increasingly Lagos. And I'm delighted to say that Nigeria's golden tenor, Joseph Oparamanuike, joins me now on the line from Indiana in the US Midwest. Joseph, absolutely delighted to have you on the program. Thank you very much indeed. We did make effort a number of times. You're a busy man, aren't you? Catching up with you was a bit of a challenge there.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And we are all busy. It just also another challenging thing is the time difference, which that's the world we live in. You live in your own time zone and all those things. So thank you for having me once again.
Well, absolutely. Thank you once again for giving us the time. I mean, I'm absolutely amazed by the power of your voice. How are you able to muster that extraordinary strength in your voice that makes you such an exquisite tenor?
Well, it's all about first of all identifying that you have the talent, and you have to go all out to helping yourself to train it. I was lucky to have to receive a scholarship to go to Conservatory of Scotland, Royal Conservatory of Scotland, and the scholarship is from the school, and I studied there for 3 years, and a lot of things opened up for me while I was studying there, and I learned a lot. And you have to learn how to use your voice in a very healthy way and still very effective. So it boils down to learning the right techniques that works for your voice in singing.
Well, absolutely. But of course, you returned to Nigeria. You've done quite a lot of your performances here, but presumably just listening to you there and being accompanied by what is clearly an African, possibly a Nigerian orchestra, presumably standard European repertory operas are still the most performed in Nigeria, but are they usually given a distinctly African spin, or do they try to remain faithful to the original form?
Well, that's like here I am and other places I've been around the world. If you're performing an African music, you try as much as you can to really make sure it stands out as an African music. You don't try to dilute the African music. Same thing goes with the Western music on any form of music or from wherever country or wherever society that is from. You try as much as you can to maintain that. But if at some point, if you want to have a little tilt, to adapting it to a certain culture, then you can, but it's always good to be conservative about the performance in which you're making, so that the right intention from the beginning, or from the time it was composed, so that the right intention will be spelled out to the listeners, and even if they don't understand the language. But from your acting and from your expressions and from the inflection of the words and all those things, then you can pass the message across.
And of course, a lot of those operas are not in English. I mean, they're often sung in sort of Italian and all that sort of thing. I mean, how do you manage that? Are you an Italian speaker, or do you have to sort of learn the words and the inflections and pronunciations of each particular song without necessarily being, fluent in that language?
Yeah, in the study where we studied opera, when I studied opera, or even if you're studying music as for voice, you have to learn the three most important classical music language, which is Italian, French, and German. Then, of course, we speak English. Then, apart from that, we're going to learn that on a basic level. Then, if you want to go further in learning it deeply, then you go about that. Then there's this system that was developed, which is called IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. With International Phonetic Alphabets, it has the phonation inside, it has all the accent, how it's supposed to be pronounced. With that system, you can pronounce and sing in any language you want to sing in the world. So that is what gives an edge. That's what makes the every opera singer sing in different languages. But you must also understand what you're saying. You must understand how to pronounce it in order for you to express it well. Because if you don't understand it, then it's more like you're singing as in a blank face. And maybe sometimes you might be demonstrating something else while you mean another thing. So you have to understand the language to an extent. And with the help of IPA, you're going to get the pronunciations right.
And can it be said that in many ways you are a pioneer in opera in Nigeria and perhaps other parts of Africa?
Well, I don't know if that is going to be the right thing to say, but many people have said that, especially in Nigeria. But I know that during the colonial days, there used to be opera performances in Ibadan, where I can't remember there was a time I also interview about it with the music estates, so we talked about it. So, but back in Muson has really tried a lot to really keep this tradition going, and that's the reason why when I returned from UK, I came back to Muson, and we also opened up. We have opera department there. I also have my opera company as well, which we have done a lot of these productions, which people are not really doing. But if it is pioneer, I don't know what history says. Then I will take.
Yes, quite. But you mentioned earlier, having to learn sort of German, French, well, you speak English, German, French, Italian, and all the rest of it, but no operas yet in Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa?
Yeah, there we have operas in Nigeria. We have late Adams Fiberesma, who has written a couple of operas about, I think he wrote about 6 operas of Bujaja,
Right, okay. I'm going to just interrupt you there. I apologize. We'll come back and finish that thought, so please stay with us. We've got to take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the Nigerian-born international classical opera singer, Joseph Oparamanuike. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Today we are invited into the exquisite voice of the Nigerian international tenor Joseph Oparamanuike. If a Nigerian or African opera singer is to be considered for the attainment of true superstar status, then Joseph would have to be one of the strongest contenders with one of the most celebrated opera voices to emerge out of this country. Discovered in Nigeria, molded and shaped in Scotland at one of the world's best academies for the performing arts, his peerless pinto tenor voice is what makes his artistry so compelling and so utterly intense, consummate and admirable, and of such rare excellence. How utterly compelling. And Nigeria's golden tenor, Joseph Oparamanuike, is still with me on the line from Indiana in the US Midwest. Thank you very much for staying with us. And I've always been completely taken by the lush sound world of classical opera, conjured up by, tenors like yourself and all the great sopranos, etc., I mean, what incredible show-stopping performances. How did you get bitten by the opera bug? How did you fall under its spell?
It started. It started when I was young. My dad is also was a tenor. He's late, Chief Anthony Oparamanuike. He's so rest in peace. He has this big tenor voice that I admire a lot, and he sings he plays some classical music, and I was like, wow, this. Well, as of then, while back in Imo State, I didn't know I would study music at some point because my first study was chemical engineering from the Federal University of Technology, where before I moved to Lagos to do my NYSC, and I found Muson Center, which helped me a lot. And at Muson Center, I had a lot of performances, and um, my eyes opened up more. And at 2007 was when I left engineering, and I said, no, this is what I am going to do. And I started writing some international exams, music exams, which I was able to get in scholarship to move. So that is the brief journey so far.
It's a very interesting brief, but I also read somewhere that at some stage you became a choir master. Is that the likely path for an opera singer in Nigeria, through the church?
Yeah, in the entire world, most of the people who are not even in the opera, even some contemporary singers, they pass through choir. So I sang in choirs right from when I was in the St. Peter Claver Seminary while I was an alto. Then before I started singing with my church choir, St. Joseph Catholic Church Olapo. Then I moved to Federal University of Technology, Owerri. Then I became the choir master of both choir of St. Joseph and um, in Federal University of Technology chaplaincy. That's St. Thomas Aquinas chaplaincy. Then I moved to Lagos. I became a choir master there. And I've at St. Agnes Catholic Church, the general choir master, and also the choir master of the 8 o'clock choir, Queen of Angels choir. Then it happens to be that I was then made the music director of the Lagos Archdiocesan choir through Father Peter Oshuntokwe, who is the chairman of the music commission. Then it has all been choir, choir, choir. There's no other way you can practice the classical music except through choirs in the Catholic Church, Anglicans, in different places, and so that has always been the path. And they also most of the Pavarotti was once in the choir before he was discovered by his first voice teacher. Then before the father now moved him to another voice teacher when that voice teacher died, and so many other. You just have to pass through choirs as a young person.
Well, I mean, that's not knocking choirs. That I was asking you that. I mean, I find choral music absolutely, I mean, entrancing. But what I really love and admire about opera is all those operatic love stories, like, you know, Richard Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, etc. I mean, the sort of the tidal tsunami scale of emotion, where the orchestra is the genre and the spirit, and the singers are these characters that float between the real, the philosophical, the endless. I mean, I know I sound obsessed by it, but for you, it must be even more so because, I mean, you're in it, aren't you?
Yes, I mean, yeah. It's a world of its own when you talk about opera. What's all the whole things you have mentioned? You have to sing above the orchestra. You have to go through the emotion. The orchestra have their own color they brings. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I'm also happy to know that you like opera music. You at the interview, I would have started interviewing you to ask you how come, because I know not many people go in that line unless you have a direct contact with it, live performance. Then that's when you start appreciating that. But opera has always been the in thing for me, and I'm happy I told that path.
Well, I think from my point of view, you'd have to ask my father because I spent a lot. I mean, he wasn't an opera singer, but he loved classical music and opera and all of that. And obviously,
Oh,
growing up
great.
around him, I fed on that love that he
Yeah.
had. But
Same with my
before we
father.
went,
That's one of the first my first touch of classical music and opera music. And
absolutely.
yeah, my father, it's just like that.
Now, before we went on the break, we were talking about operas being performed in sort of local Nigerian languages and so on. Are there any operas at all being composed in Nigeria? You mentioned, I think, a couple of them, or is it something that the audience isn't quite used to? Is awareness of opera growing in Nigeria?
The awareness is growing gradually, but it's true still Western operas. But like I was saying before we went on break, we have composers like the likes of Adam Fiberesma, I think old Debussy also composed some opera. But the challenging thing is documentation. You can't walk into any library, you can't walk into any bookstore or a music store to buy them. You can't see them. You can't see them because most of the performance we buy the books. Fortunately, I don't have any of them here to show. You have to buy the books, and also at some point, if it is an opera that has stayed for more than 50 years or 70 years, then you don't bother so much about some copyright stuff. But if they are the recent ones, then you have to think about that. Then, but you can easily find that. But there are people who are coming up with few works. I know a friend, Sylvanos, who has put up one and but yet to be performed. I know Chijoke Ngobili was telling me something about that. There are a couple of then coming into musicals. I know Ayo Ajayi and Kenny Oretimehi who are also writing musicals, but we need them. We need them in books where you can take that and sell it out to any part of the world. It has to be documented. It shouldn't just come from the head and you pass it down to the singers and the performers, or the scribble down on the back. It has to be documented, published, and it will go around the world. But we don't have that. That is where the challenging thing is. And you want to meet the families to see if you can get it from the families. They can't easily find it because most of those work we're talking about, the composers are dead. So sometimes when they die, when they ransack, they just people who don't understand how valuable those music scripts are. They will just throw them away or just discard them, or they get destroyed as mistakenly destroyed or accidentally destroyed. So that is what we have. That's where the problem is. And I will also be calling on some of the composers I know. Please, when you write your works, do not transfer your work from your brain to the singer. Put it on paper, notate it, put the score down. That is the challenging thing that we have. Hopefully, one day somebody will hear this and start up a new journey on it.
Well, those are good points you make. We've got about 60 seconds or so left before we have to sadly end the chat. Who would you say are your really big sources of inspiration when it comes to opera, both Nigerian and non-Nigerian?
Well, the non-Nigeria is what everybody knows. The three tenors: Pavarotti, Domingo, Placido Domingo, and Jose Carreras. Then recently, I'm so much in love with the voice of Juan Diego Flores and Lawrence Brownlee. Then Cameria, Yavia Camerana. Then we have Omobello, our own Omobello. We have Francesca Chiegine. There are quite a lot of them. Then coming down to South Africa, you have Pretty Yende, you have Levy, who is my good friend, and a couple of them. So they have really inspired me a lot in this journey.
Well, I have to say that you inspire us, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Nigeria's golden tenor, Joseph Oparamanuike, talking to me there from Indiana in the US Midwest.